Hey all you pottery people, Sarah again from Taylor Art Studio with another virtual demo. Today we're going to make the candle holder for our spooky candle. If you remember last week I did a video on this fake candle guy. So I'm going to make the candle holder for him now. So I have him there for reference to make sure that I make it large enough for him to sit inside. This cardboard tube was about the size that I needed, so I used it as the circle stencil. I did not let my slab get dried out as much as I should have. I should be working with leather hard, soft leather hard, but leather hard clay, and my clay is still pretty smushy. But, you know, we're just gonna roll with it anyways. So, as you see, that strip was a little bit too short. So I rolled it out to elongate it a little bit more and to thin it out a little bit. It doesn't need to be super thick. This is going to go around the edge of that circle to make it more of a cup shape or a bowl kind of thing, so the candle will sit inside. I'm using my ruler so I get some nice straight edges. Alright, now I'm going to wrap that around and see where I need to cut to make it the right length, and I'm cutting it at an angle so that when they meet up they're nice and flush. Alright, so now I'm going to smooth that on, smooth out all the seams. And this clay, again, if you let your clay dry to the consistency, the proper consistency, it'll be a lot easier to work with. As if you work with it when it's still floppy and wet, you know, any move that you make, any pinch, any tool pressure or anything like that, you'll slightly alter it and have to go back and forth to fix things. So just take it from me, make sure you let it dry enough. All right, I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to make the bottom part now, the stem and the foot. I'm going to make that with coils. You can make that with slabs that you assemble together as well, but I want to do it with coils because I didn't let my clay dry enough. I measured the top part so that I can make it the foot about the same size, because if I make the foot too small it won't be sturdy, it won't be able to hold up my candle holder. So I want to make sure that's about the same size as the cup part and the candle that sits on top. So here I go working with coils. So I roll out a long coil and then I just keep going up. And if you want to see those coils, if you want to see the lines, sometimes that can look really cool. Just make sure that your coils are nice and even. But that's not my intention, so I don't care if they're kind of lumpy, because I'm going to smooth it out anyways. For the stem part, as I brought that coil up, I kept my my pointer finger inside so that I didn't close it. I want to keep it open and hollow. So now I have my finger inside again, and I'm going to use my thumb on the outside to smooth the coils together. And if my clay was a little bit drier, it wouldn't be I wouldn't have such a hard time here with, you know, any move that I make with my hand, any pinch that I make alters the shape slightly. So even when you're working with coils, sometimes it's nice to let it stiffen up a little bit before you go on to the smoothing part. I'm going to trim that top so that it's flat, so that it's even. That's where I'm going to connect that top part for the candle. Here I'm going to use a ruler to cut a really thin strip that's going to go around the foot, and that'll just make that a nice clean edge down there at the bottom. And it was slightly too short, so I'm going to use a rib to elongate it a little bit, compress it, and smush it out a little bit more. And I did I walked away for a little bit and let it stiffen up a little bit. All right, so that's the right size. So now I'm going to, I have that curve, I put it on there, and then I'll go and score it and then add a little bit of water to make it stick. And again, I cut the ends of that little strip at an angle so that they meet and they're nice and flush. And I'll smooth that on there. I'll use one of those wooden tools that has a rounded end, because I don't want to be cutting into it. I want to be just smoothing that seam together. I'm fixing the bottom first. And I'm just closing that seam. I always recommend when you add pieces of clay together, always close the seam. You don't have to completely smooth it out. See, I'm using the straight, pointier one, a straighter edge, because I do want to see that place. I want that plane change, but I don't want the seam itself to be open, because if I leave it there without smoothing it together at all, it'll probably crack later. So I'm just going to keep smoothing that out. And that's one thing about hand building in comparison to throwing. You know, when you throw something, it's usually, aside from trimming it, it's usually pretty much done after you take it off the wheel. But with hand building, there's a lot more back and forth and smoothing and working out little bumps and stuff like that. But hand building is much easier, in my opinion, than throwing sometimes. And then I'm going to clean up that top part that's for the candle. Again, I'm using a straight edge to kind of smooth out the side and make it a nice clean straight wall on the side there, and cutting off some of that excess clay. Oh, also, if you notice, if you don't have a banding wheel at home, you don't need it. It just makes it a little bit easier when you can spin something around. If you have a Lazy Susan at home, those work great. You can get a really cheap plastic Lazy Susan on the internet, you know, on Amazon or something, or at the store, and they work just as fine. I put a little bit of newspaper underneath it because I don't want my pieces to stick to the banding wheel because it's metal. Alright, so now I have the foot and stem, and I have the little cup part where the candle will sit, and now I'm going to score that really well. Again, you need to make sure that your clay is the right consistency, because as I'm setting that on there and attaching it to the top part, it's making the bottom part of that kind of cave in a little bit. So just make sure that your pieces are leather hard when you go to add them together, so you're not altering the shape or anything. So I'm just going to smooth those together. I do add a really thin little coil at the connection point, just to secure it a little bit more. Just a really thin one. And then I do trim a little bit off of that foot piece that I added on there. I didn't want it so thick. I didn't like that it was exactly the same size as the top part. I do want it to be similar, but not exactly. So now I've got my candle holder for my fake candle. Oh, and clean up the bottom. Nope, see, I'm trying to put something on the inside to stabilize it, to keep it from caving in. But I just need more patience, that's all it is. Just let it dry a little bit, Sarah, before you try to assemble things like this. So just doing a little bit of tidying before I decide that I'm finished with it. And these are, I mean, this kind of shape, this kind of vessel, you can also use it for, you know, you can make a taller wall on the outside and make a little fruit bowl or something like that. I really like it. And then there he is. There's the candle holder with the candle on top of it. And of course, I'll post a picture when he's all done. So thanks, guys, for watching, and I hope you're staying safe and staying inspired.